Well, I did tell you that he was playing some top-tiered stuff. Donald Trump crushes anything that Mark Carney has coming out of his mouth, as he clearly shows that he knows what he's doing, while Mark Carney has, just like everything, no idea. Welcome to the Canadian Shield. My name is Sterling. About a week ago, I told all of you that Donald Trump is playing this game at a level that most of the world leaders are not familiar with, including, especially, Mark Carney. Mark Carney has no idea what he's doing. He thinks that he understands politics because he's been into a boardroom. He tells his own press that he doesn't want them to be interrupted, and he thinks somehow that's going to translate into politics. It's not going to translate into politics very well unless you want to tell yourself that you're going to make people disappear, because that's the only politician who can act that way. That's the only type of politician who can act that way and get away with it, by sending out military and armed goons to hunt down anybody that disagrees with him. Now, I'm not sure that that's not what Carney wants. What I'm saying to you is that's the only way that it works. Otherwise, he's just a temper tantrum waiting to happen. He goes on in front of the press and tells everybody that Donald Trump is being mean, and Donald Trump made him sad, and Donald Trump is going to learn the hard way. Meanwhile, the entire world is begging Donald Trump just to reconsider it mildly. So Donald Trump said, you know what? Sure, I'll give you 90 days. And the genius of what this is happening is lost on a person like Mark Carney, who just thinks that it's all about numbers, it's all about math. He has no understanding whatsoever. He has no finesse, and the kind of leader that you need to take on Donald Trump, you need to understand a couple of things that Mark Carney simply doesn't possess. Mark Carney is playing Pee-wee. He's playing with the 6-year-olds, and Trump is playing with the Hall of Famers. When the tariffs were announced on April 2nd, I told all of you that it was nothing to worry about, that it was some top-tiered stuff, and that if you played your cards right, everything is going to be just fine. I told Pierre Poilievre's people, though I doubt they're watching me, but you get my point, that they shouldn't be talking about reciprocal tariffs. That's just the words of a hysterical person who has no idea how the market really works. Of course, we can see that many people don't know how the market really works because of the panic selling that happened during the week when everyone decided that the world was on fire, lit their hair on fire. They were running around hysterical, screaming and jumping up and down like a bunch of crazed banshees. I told all of you then to buy low and you'll be able to sell high. Now, if you see the state of the market today, you absolutely will be able to sell high. I'm going to show you a couple of things, and then I will break down for you exactly how this plays out right into Donald Trump's hands. What's actually transpiring, what's actually going on behind the scenes in all of the places that Mark Carney doesn't want you to look.
You got the market seeing your brilliance.
Yeah, that's up almost 7 points. 2,500 points. Nobody's ever heard of it. It's going to be a record.
That people were jumping a little bit out of line. They were getting yippy, you know? They were getting a little bit yippy, a little bit afraid.
In case you couldn't hear it, the one guy said to him, well, the market really sees your brilliance now. And then Donald Trump talked about how the numbers and all of the bounce back that the market has performed today. And then you heard him say, a reporter asked him why he decided to do it now. And he said that everybody was panicking, everybody was freaking out. So I decided to do it and teach them all a lesson. Here we can see the enormous amount of activity on the market today. Now, a lot of these numbers are not, they're up and down, right? They're kind of these kinds of things. So don't get the bad idea. But a couple of days ago, you can see it in red there when everybody was in their panic sell-off mode. And then all of a sudden, Donald Trump makes the announcement that he's putting the tariffs that he's putting the pause on the tariffs for 90 days. And not only did the market bounce back, but it shot through the roof. And if any of you are out there who bought low, good for you, right? Like, because now you can sell it for 10 times what you bought for, probably a lot more anyway. And that's a different aspect of what we're talking about. A minute ago, everybody was talking about how Donald Trump has no idea what they're doing, and now everybody's silent. They're all quiet. There's nobody out there saying, oh no, because the market has bounced back. And the reason that they are not is because they don't know what they're talking about in the first place. That's the thing you got to understand. Many of them are speaking from this ideology instead of speaking for what's best. That's something that you have to be wary of. Like Mark Carney, who's speaking from a position of ideology, not from a position for what is best for Canadians. Now, I'll admit the Conservatives should have been careful when they were talking about how they were going to handle the tariffs. But we can see now with this move here that everything else in Pierre Poilievre's platform will probably work to the best for Canadians. Everything in Mark Carney's platform is all about making it into the central government, looking like USSR or looking like China, where every road leads to the federal government.
Look, nothing's over yet, but we have a tremendous amount of spirit from other countries, including China. China wants to make a deal. They just don't know how quite to go about it. They'll call John, they'll do somebody, they'll go through somebody, but they're all calling, how do we do this? They all want to make a deal. 90-day pause for the people that didn't retaliate, because I told them if you retaliate, we're going to double it. And that's what I did with China, because they did retaliate.
He was asked about China because China is the only one that actually got more tariffs. They're trying to play hardball. They're circling their ships around Taiwan, and they are prepared to go to war over this but I'll get into why that is in a minute. I just want you to hear how Trump spoke about China. He retaliated with China, and now tariffs with China are about 125%. That's going to make it very difficult on China to make any money. And one of the things that I did read this morning was that there are people out there in the world, countries that are trying to sell off the U.S. debt. This could be another reason why he initiated the pause on the tariffs today, because the sell-off on the debt is he probably wants to buy it back himself, and that will be a little bit trickier to accomplish if he doesn't have any money outright. But I believe that ultimately the idea is that he wants to move the manufacturing out of China and move it back to the United States, which of course will give him the trillions of dollars that the Chinese have coming through their communist hands every year, which is one of the reasons why China has the largest navy on earth, for example. I don't say that it's the most powerful, but it has the most ships. Donald Trump having all of that money come into his country, having the manufacturing done in his country. So instead of importing from all of these countries, he's going to export to all of these countries. Now, there's historically all kinds of countries that have come forward. They're claiming 75. Now, I'll let you hear just a couple of more snippets before I break down to you the overall top tier level that's going on around you. And so that you don't freak out, so you don't lose your minds and you don't panic like the rest of the people who are operating from a position of ignorance and fear. And I don't blame them, because that's what, instead of the government calming them down, that's what the government is trying to do. They're trying to stoke the fear so that you will give them your faith. It's a classic move. It's been done since the beginning of time. It was really done well during 1930s Germany.
And as you all know, the president just put out a statement announcing an additional tariff on China. The tariff on China will now go up to 125% because China imprudently decided to retaliate against the United States. And as I said at the podium yesterday, when you punch at the United States of America, President Trump is going to punch back harder. In that same vein, we have had more than 75 countries from around the world reach out to President Trump and his team here at the White House to negotiate better trade deals for the American worker. In the meantime, there will be a 90-day pause on the reciprocal tariffs as these negotiations are ongoing.
Good, thank you. And we saw the successful negotiating strategy that President Trump implemented a week ago today. It has brought more than 75 countries forward to negotiate. It took great courage for him to stay the course until this moment. And what we have ended up with here, as I told everyone a week ago, they are in this very spot. Do not retaliate, and you will be rewarded.
Here we can see that Mark Carney has no idea what he's doing, that Donald Trump is ahead of him at every turn. Mark Carney wants to believe that because he's negotiated some deals through the stock market that he understands how to manipulate the dollar or the stock market or impact the economy. All Mark Carney can seem to do is drain things out of the Canadian economy and hide it in Bermuda. Donald Trump, on the other hand, is trying to create an economy that has everybody working, gives everybody a job. Mark Carney doesn't want that. He wants to select a very few people to have all of the industry. He wants to make more monopolies in Canada, not less. What really is important is that Mark Carney doesn't understand any of what Donald Trump's doing. Now he's going to come out and he's going to say, mark my words, he's going to say, oh, it's very erratic. He's all over the place. But really, from Donald Trump's point of view, is he gave you the warning, then he gave you a pause. Now you had a chance to digest it. You saw what's going to happen. You saw what it's looking like. And then you called him up on the phone and you said, hey. So then he actually initiated the April 2nd, and everybody called him up on the phone freaking out, including Vietnam. Can you imagine the government of Vietnam calling the United States and saying, hey, let's have free trade. Let's have 0 for 0 tariffs. Because in Vietnam, they make a lot of stuff that they sell only in the United States. So turns out that, Vietnam might not be as communist as you want to believe that it is. Could be just capitalist. Of course, China is the one that is going to be losing their minds because China sees that what I'm telling you to happen, they're going to lose all that industry. It's going to come back into the United States and they won't have the leverage that they have. They won't be able to run around the world saying, oh, we're, Belt and Road deal, and try to convince everybody that China should get their resources because they have the manufacturing power. Now the United States will have the manufacturing power and democracy. So they will have the things that they had all through the 50s and 60s that made them the country that everybody can remember off the top of their head. How that affects Canadians is that we need to stop talking about the tariffs. We need to stop being hysterical. I can't believe how much the far left, Mark Carney, the liberals, and the corporate media are trying to stoke the fear, and that nobody sees that that's exactly what it is. There's nothing in the Canadian economy that is any good right now. So what really do you believe that Donald Trump is going to do to it? It might hurt Mark Carney's pockets. It might hurt a couple of really super rich people. But Trump's moves are not going to harm the middle class or lower, because Trump's moves are only about America, and everybody understands that, except for the people that are trying to tell you that it's going to be something different. Now, if you give your vote to somebody based on fear and not thinking your way through it, then really you should reevaluate what you understand about the global economy. Donald Trump doesn't want to go broke. He wants everybody to think that he did a great job, and there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. The politicians in our country don't want you to talk about the food crisis, the housing crisis, the opioid crisis, the immigration crisis. There's so many things going wrong inside of Canada right now, and they're trying to distract all of you with Trump, who is playing at 3D chess at a level that Mark Carney could only hope for. Obviously, I mean, he's like, oh no, we're going to create a new world trading order. Meanwhile, 75 countries in the world that Carney might be hoping to trade with are calling up the states and saying, hey, can you give us a minute? We're just trying to get over there. We're trying to get everything set up. And so you see now the beautiful part of it is that he's got this commitment from all of these industries, right? So if you're buying an Apple now in Europe, you're going to be buying it made in America, right? And if you have a 0 for 0 tariff, there's no other choice for many of the countries in the world, because if they don't say 0 for 0, there are one, maybe two industries are going to leave the country and start in the United States. So they will actually be having to be forced to import it with their own tariffs imposed on it. At least if they go 0 for 0, they can say, okay, well, we can continue to make them, we can keep these jobs in the country. Of course, this is all lost on the Liberal government, because the Liberal government is fixated on trying to gain control. They want to turn Canada into their own personal piggy bank. That's how it seems. That's why all of the policies coming out of them are all about creating a new government, a new department in the government to control all of this, and a new department to control all of that. All the while trying to tell you that he's going to make green steel, and the whole wide world is going to be trading with him. I'll let you hear it from his own mouth.
Canada to lead in developing a new system of trade, but we will choose our trade partners carefully for those who share our values and who treat us fairly.
Ah, boo-hoo. They didn't treat with you fairly. Did it hurt your feelings, Mr. Carney? You refused to give medical insurance to people who worked in coal mines. That doesn't seem fair at all. You removed billions in tax dollars from the Canadian system to enrich you and your friends while the rest of us suffer and do without. That doesn't seem fair either. You throw independent media off of your rally, not even out of the building. You throw them right off the property. That absolutely is not fair. You give preferential treatment to the CBC and the CTV. That's definitely not fair. So you're not one to be talking about what's fair and isn't. Also, to tell yourself that we're going to find trading partners that share our values, I'm curious to think in my head what country more than the United States shares our values. Are you thinking China? China, where they lock you into your factory? China, where they put people of certain religion, of any religion, into re-education camps? China, where they unalive people for certain crimes? We don't have that in Canada. So just show me anywhere in China that shares our values. They might share your values. They absolutely probably share the Marxist tenements of your values. But most Canadians don't agree with you. Most Canadians care about one thing: prosperity. Most Canadians are just fine doing the work that needs to be done if it gives them a payout. What's problem is that you have removed the payout. You and all of your billionaire friends have decided that you can bleed Canadians dry and that they'll just continue to go on, trudging through the misery that you have initiated to make you rich while they sleep in their cars, while they make housing encampments. I don't believe that that's what Canadians are looking for, and I certainly don't believe that that's a value that they possess. Cramming them into high rises that go up 30, 40, 50 floors, certainly not something that they desire, or there would be none of them for sale instead of the 30% depreciation that has been currently occurring in some of the largest or highest density markets in Canada. Of course, you can't understand any of that because you don't allow for anyone to ask you questions that aren't absolutely pre-approved by your office. You don't understand that because your values are not rooted in those kinds of things. You tell yourself that you're very rich, so everybody must agree with the way that you think of things. I would wager that more people have purchased your book so they can rip it apart than people who have purchased it because they agree with you. People don't want to be poor. They want prosperity. This is why Trump's popularity is into the 80s and the Democratic Party is nearly into the single digits. This is why you keep seeing the increased desperation from the far left, because they are trying hard as they can to make everybody get mad at Trump. His decisions and his policies are only harming them, not the rest of us. And if you want to have a good job and a decent paycheck and a home and a car you can afford, well, that's not an ideology that they share in China. That's not a value that they possess in China. So when you hear Mark Carney talk about how he's going to find a country that has our shared values and still has the ability to trade with us, who do you feel that is? Without the United States, Canada is going to be one of the poorest nations on earth, certainly one of the poorest nations in the Western Hemisphere. We don't have those markets. What we do have is a market with the Americans, and all we need to do is offer them a deal on tariffs. We have already a free trade agreement that Trump seems to be honoring. So what is Mark Carney talking about? Pierre Poilievre, however, is spending very little time talking about Donald Trump. He's talking about how he's going to make this country strong, how this country is going to have jobs for its people. And then we will worry about trade. Then we will worry about what the rest of the world is. We have so much inside this country that doesn't work properly. We should be focused on that. How can we be telling ourselves that we're going to be worried about what's happening in the Middle East or in Africa or in Asia when we should be worried about what's happening in our own backyard? You let me know what you think. Do you think that Mark Carney will be able to find somebody with a shared values more than the United States? I'm going to wrap here. I want to thank you for listening. I'll talk to you next time.